The Detroit Lions had just lost the greatest player in franchise history. Not to age, not to injury, to a fax machine. But the strangest part isn't how Barry Sanders left. It's that for a few weeks that fall, the team he abandoned actually looked good. That team was a lie, but Lions fans fall for it every time. Let's start with the facts. On July 27, 1999, the day before training camp, Barry Sanders announced his retirement by faxing a letter to his hometown paper in Wichita. Then, he flew to London. No press conference, no goodbye. He was 31, completely healthy, 1 year removed from a 2,000-yard season and just 1,457 yards short of the all-time rushing record. He walked away from all of it. And honestly, smart decision if you look at what came next. Fans were gutted, but mostly they were furious, and the fury was about the method. Reporters caught fans calling it an insult, saying they were disgusted he'd faxed it in. One writer said the news hit Detroit like a sucker punch. But Sanders' reason never changed. The fire was gone, and he didn't think the Lions could win a Super Bowl. On that second point, let the record show, he was correct. So head coach Bobby Ross walked into 1999 with no legend, no replacement, and no warning. And somehow, it started great, which should have been the first red flag. Charlie Batch opened at quarterback, got hurt because, of course, the Lions had key injuries, and veteran Gus Frerotte took over. There was no feature back, just a committee. Receiver Jermaine Crowell became the whole offense with over 1,300 yards. Nobody expected anything. The Lions shot out of a cannon to a 6-2 start. The signature win came in Week 9 at home against the St. Louis Rams, a team that came in 6-1 and would go on to win the Super Bowl. Detroit beat them anyway. Lions 31, Rams 27. A franchise that lost Barry Sanders by fax suddenly looked like a contender. But this is the Lions, and with the Lions, the good part is just the bait. Detroit climbed to 8-4, playoff position in hand. But the cracks were showing. Ross had already made a baffling call to go for 2 late against Arizona, failed, and lost the game. The whispers started. Was Ross overthinking this? He was. He would not be the last Lions coach about whom this was asked. Then the floor gave out. From 8-4, Detroit lost its final 4 games. They finished 8-8 and backed into the playoffs anyway, purely because the tiebreakers fell their way. This wasn't good football. This was a team falling down the stairs and landing on a playoff berth. The wild card round was a mercy killing. Washington 27, Lions 13. Years later, one analytics site called this group one of the worst playoff teams ever assembled, which, historically, still makes them one of the better Lions teams ever. But in the moment, the feeling was hollow relief. Making the playoffs the year after Barry felt like proof the franchise could survive without him. It could not. This was only the beginning of one of the greatest declines in sports history. But in 2000, the Lions had no reason not to run it back. The exact same movie. And this time, it broke the coach. Same fast start. Detroit came out 5-2. The highlight, a home upset of Green Bay. Lions 31, Packers 24. Batch was healthy. The pattern held. The Lions start hot. You know the drill by now. So did the coach, because right on schedule, the wheels wobbled. Back-to-back losses to Indianapolis and Miami dropped them to 5-4. The Miami game, at home, was a 23-8 beating, one of the ugliest of Ross's tenure. The crowd booed. The next morning, Bobby Ross quit. And how he quit is the most Lions thing in this entire video. According to Mitch Albom's column in the Free Press, Ross walked into the locker room and did housekeeping first, reminded the players about a team banquet, told them to lift weights, told them to think about next week's game. And then he told them he was quitting. This was an old-school disciplinarian, a man whose entire philosophy was that you outwork and outlast the other guy. And the Lions had drained him so completely that he tapped out in the middle of a season. The front office begged him to sleep on it. He came back Monday, same answer. The owner said Ross had simply burned himself out. Coaching the Lions did that to people. It would keep doing it for 20 more years. In stepped Gary Moeller, former head coach at Michigan. Ford handed him a 3-year contract rather than the typical interim tag. And it worked. Moeller won his first 3. Detroit climbed to 8-4 through 12 games. They looked like a lock. Remember that phrase, looked like a lock. It's about to do a lot of heavy lifting. Buried in that hot streak was a footnote nobody could understand at the time. On Thanksgiving, Detroit blew out New England 34-9. Late in a decided game, the Patriots sent in a rookie 4th-string quarterback to mop up. He went 1 for 3 for 6 yards. His name was Tom Brady. It was his NFL debut. The Lions beat him like a drum, the single most Lions way imaginable to encounter the greatest quarterback of all time and take absolutely nothing from it. But you already know how this team does hot streaks. It was 8-4. And 8-4 in Detroit isn't a record. It's a warning. From 8-4, the Lions won exactly one more game. It came down to the final Sunday on Christmas Eve at home, a must-win game against a Chicago Bears team that was 4-11. Fun fact, this game was blacked out on Detroit television because they did not sell out the game. Detroit built a 10-point lead and gave it away. Merry Christmas. It came down to the last play of the season, a Bears field goal from 54 yards, and it split the uprights. Bears 23, Lions 20. One kick. That's what the whole season came down to. One kick knocked Detroit out at 9-7. Detroit fans at home could only see this devastating play as an in-game cut-in during the other televised game. Perhaps that was the NFL's Christmas gift to fans. But the field goal didn't end the era. Ownership did. And to understand that, you have to meet the man in the owner's box. William Clay Ford, grandson of Henry Ford himself. Now, every great American dynasty has that one kid, and in the Ford family, the theory goes, Bill was it. His brothers ran the company. Henry Ford II built the modern automaker. The family put a man on the assembly line of history. And Bill, they gave a football team to keep him away from Ford Motor Company. As the legend has it, the Lions weren't a prize. They were a safe distance, a place where he could play executive without hurting the family business, where the stakes were merely a beloved franchise and the emotional well-being of an entire city. Low risk. What's the worst that could happen? He bought the Lions in 1964. Over the next 50 years, he would win exactly one playoff game. One in 50 years. You cannot do that by accident. You cannot do that on purpose. To lose that consistently for that long takes a kind of dark genius, the anti-Midas. Every roster he touched turning to bronze at best. The family kept him away from the cars. They just forgot to keep him away from Lions fans. And in January 2001, staring at a team that was one kick from the playoffs, this man decided the whole thing was broken. So, he blew it up. On January 9th, the Lions hired Matt Millen, a Super Bowl-winning linebacker, a respected broadcaster, and a man with zero front office experience of any kind. When Ford offered him the job, Millen said out loud that he wasn't qualified. Ford's answer, essentially, "You're smart, you'll figure it out." Play that back. The candidate said he couldn't do the job, and the owner hired him anyway, which, when you think about it, is the most on-brand hire this franchise could possibly make. The black sheep of the Fords finding the one man in America as unqualified to run a football team as he was. Birds of a feather. Ford said he'd stake his reputation on Matt Millen's success. What would follow was one of the worst eras of football in history. Millen's first move? He fired Gary Moeller, the coach with the winning record, and replaced him with Marty Morningweg, a San Francisco assistant who'd never been a head coach anywhere. So this is where we leave it. The Lions survived losing Barry Sanders, made a playoff run, collapsed twice, watched a proud coach quit mid-season, then let a winning one walk out behind him. And in response, the black sheep of the Ford family handed the entire franchise to a TV analyst who told him, to his face, that he wasn't the right man for the job. William Clay Ford staked his reputation on it. He had no idea he'd just hired the architect of the worst stretch in modern NFL history. A road that led, 7 years later, to a number no franchise had ever posted: 0-16. But that, my friends, is the next one.